Hey folks, I promise you that I am not heresy hunting, but I will admit it's a little strange that after being inactive for so long that I post 2 videos in one day exposing, um, well, heresy. I'm not looking for it, but it's coming at me, and I feel compelled to respond. Now this one, unlike the Calvinist video I just completed, should not be as popular or well argued. Um, Calvinists are aplenty, and there are some things about Calvinism that is good. And I will never sit here and ever try to tell you that Calvinists are not saved. I think there's an improper understanding of who God is, but that's where I leave it. This person is perpetuating a message that is very dangerous, and as I've pushed them a little bit to explain themselves, I'm only more confused at how in the world they've arrived at this particular teaching. So let me dive right into it. The video in question is called Sunday Law, Mark of the Beast, 666, the Final Warning Video, Obama, which I don't know what that has to do with anything. It's 11 minutes long. I got into it, and it very quickly made me roll my eyes, because it basically teaches you that the mark of the beast is not a physical mark that you take on your forehead or your hand, as Scripture tells you. Instead, anybody that worships on Sunday. And of course, they go into the whole idea that Sunday worship is really a nod to sun god worship, and that as such we are worshiping a false god, and so on and so forth. My first volley was really more inquisitive than anything else, because I wanted to see how they explain themselves further, especially when it comes to the specific scripture that talks about the mark being physical, and going so far as to say that if we don't take this thing, we will not be able to buy, trade, or sell. So I said, when Scripture speaks about the mark on our forehead or hand, and without it we cannot trade, buy, or sell, how in the world does that gel with your Saturday, Sunday worship theory? The response I got doesn't appear to be from the channel owner, but someone that obviously thinks like they do. It's Lori Gurr, and she says it's not about a chip, it's about your thoughts, forehead, and how you act on those thoughts, right hand. It's about worship, who you worship. There are many antichrists. It's God's words. Go, as long as you don't worship the Antichrist, you have salvation and have God's mark. A chip does not control your thoughts or actions. If you do worship Antichrist, you will be marked with the beast mark. It's all spiritual. Well, that's a stretch. I get how they're equating your forehead with your thoughts and your actions with your hand, but they don't even remotely try to explain how that would affect your ability to buy and sell. That completely fails to answer a major part of my question. So in some ways it automatically makes me want to dismiss it. But I stick in there, I hang in there, and I volleyed one last thing to them, and who knows, maybe another video will come once they respond to it. I said the following. So let me ask you this. Should a day come in the near future when an actual physical chip is required to be implanted in your hand or forehead, and without it you will not be able to buy or sell, will you take it? I think your theory is very dangerous. It condemns those that Paul clearly does not in Romans 14:5, and it sets up those of your belief system to naively take a chip or something like it, thinking that your Saturday worship saves you. As for me, I consider every day the Sabbath. Why? Because I rest in Jesus Christ, who is the fulfillment of the law and who is my Sabbath rest. If you want to look up Romans 14:5, you can, but let me read it to you. One person considers one day more sacred than another. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Paul, as early as the church was forming back in that day, already had this issue pop up. And there were those arguing at that time that they should continue worshiping on Saturday as they always had in the Jewish tradition. And then there were brand new converts to the new covenant that felt like, well, since Jesus Christ rose from the dead on a Sunday, that's our day of victory. That's the day we want to honor him. Paul says, do either one or do both, or consider every day sacred. Whatever you decide, be fully convinced in your own mind. And yet we have people directly willing to contradict Scripture. Unless you cut out Paul's words here and in multitudes of other places, you simply have zero legs to stand on when perpetuating such a false ideal. Heresy indeed.